We're parents, teachers, and educators, and like you, we're passionate about restoring our culture for Christ. This is Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education.
Hello again. This is Marlon Detweiler with Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. We have today with us Chris McKenna. This is my first meeting of Chris, and so I'm looking forward to learning about what he does. But before we jump into that, first, welcome, Chris. It's nice to have you here.
Thanks, Marlon. Yeah, this is going to be great. We'll get to know each other well here.
Give us a little bit of background on you personally before we get into the subject matter.
Yeah, for sure. We have a lot to talk about. So I'm a father of four. Andrew and I have been married now 23 years. My kids are ages 11, 13, 13, and 18. So we have grades 5, 6, 7, and 12 covered at the moment. And so I share that because I think it's important for parents who might be listening to this to know that I'm not just a guy who has a lot of ideas about internet safety because I've read a lot of books, which I have, but I've also applied everything that I'm going to share. I've applied to my own guinea pig children in some way. So I will share what I know works, because if I can trust it with my humans, I want you to know the things I share have been tested in that way. But
that's funny. I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were through.
No, but I mean, this comes out of a need that I observed. Marlon, this isn't my degree. I'm not an IT guy. That's a really horrible way to start a podcast about internet safety, I know, but that's not my background. I was a CPA who for 12 years worked for Ernst & Young in process improvement and risk mitigation. That was my job. The Lord called me into full-time ministry. So I then transitioned in 2009 into a junior high ministry role. And for 7 years, watched 6th, 7th, and 8th graders start to carry the internet with them, right? So I observed that phenomenon take place. And through the lens of risk, which is what I did for 12 years, I saw risk being put into the pockets of amazing human beings in junior high. And that was a problem to me. So I created a Facebook group that led to a website, which now is a team of 8 people that travel the world, do presentations all over, hundreds of them at schools, classical, faith-based, charter, private, whatever, all over. And we want to just help as many awesome families like those listening to this, whatever caregiver role you have, bridge that gap between your reality and tech companies that honestly do not care about the safety, well-being, and mental health of your children. Yeah. So we stand in that gap.
It's actually quite disturbing to think in terms of how they record our information and then deliver content to gradually progress us in directions that just aren't good. I'm well aware of how that works with pornography, and I suspect there are many other areas. So one of the things when I interrupted you, and I'm sorry, but when I interrupted you, one of the things you talked about was that this is something that you developed, and it's really heartfelt because it's for your own children. It reminded me that one of my sons has referred to him and his brothers regarding our curriculum as the test dummies. So tell us, the organization, I don't know what you call it, the organization or business is called Protecting Young Eyes. You've started to introduce what it is. Take it a little bit further. Tell us what you do at Protecting Young Eyes.
Yeah, so if you were to come to our website, we also own the domain Protecting Young Eyes, but it's Protect Young Eyes. And coming to us, you'll find us either way. But what we do, so the statement that I make in all of our presentations is we understand that many times parents are often afraid of what their kids will find online. Therefore, through research, education, and advocacy, we provide amazing parents with practical tips so that they can help their families be prepared, balanced, and protected online. Those 3 outcomes are what we want from our 3 activities, which are research, education, and advocacy. So we also have a nonprofit side. So just getting that going in the last month or so to really focus on that advocacy side, because I've testified in front of the Senate. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll have multiple hearings that I'll be testifying at all over the country, Idaho, Montana, Texas, and other places. That part is very important to me because the only way you make companies the size of countries change their mind is unfortunately through laws and litigation.
Yeah.
Right. So, but back to the other side of this, to the families that are listening to this is, right, we do a lot of research, boots on the ground, really practical information, so that regardless of where your technical IQ is, remember I said I'm not a tech guy, regardless of where your technical IQ is, whether you're a parent, grandparent, aunt, or uncle, we believe that we have ways of describing things that make sense to you, both relational and technical solutions. Because Marlon, there's a balance there. There is no one toggle, technical toggle, software, hardware that can protect our kids fully.
Yeah.
We have to supplement technical solutions with relational connection, which we call digital trust. We have a whole framework around building digital trust so that we can balance those two areas of solutions, two areas of tips, in order to help our amazing young people use technology in good, God-honoring ways. And, we've sharpened our view of that over 7 years. I've personally done over 700 presentations, right? I've talked to tens of thousands of families, literally all over the world. And what's interesting is that regardless if you're sitting in Florida, California, Michigan, or somewhere else, I did a talk to a parent group in the German embassy in Iran, if you can believe it, through VPN. They all have the same questions. They have the same challenges we do. So technology is non-discriminatory. It's like one of the only things that doesn't care about your political affiliation. It comes at you either way. So
That's great. So let's talk first, maybe a bit more simply, or the simple category of the technical solution. Then I really want to hear about the relational solution. That is intriguing to me.
Yeah, so we have what we have call 5 layers of digital protection. So people listening to this won't be able to see the drawing that I'm making with my hands on the recording of this, but imagine a pyramid. So imagine maybe, Giza, whatever you have in your brain as the pyramids, and imagine 5 horizontal sections in that pyramid that go increasingly from wide at the base to narrow at the top. And at the base of that pyramid is the digital trust framework. That's the relational side, which we'll get to in a minute. And then it's at the base because it's the most important. It's the foundation on which everything is built on. Now, in a faith-based environment, under that base, Marlon, I put rock, which is the rock of truth, prayer, petition, believing God can do all things. But here's the deal, and I have to say this in front of faith-based groups. You can't pray your porn problem away solely. Like, right? Jesus was practical flesh and blood among us too. There's a practical side to this that we pair that spiritual, yes, pray for them, right? Guard them in that way, but we got to do the practical stuff too. So I want to just put that out there as a component of this. But those technical solutions are a good router. Hug your router. Your router is the most important digital device in your house. Why? Because it's the doorway through which the content comes.
Sure.
Is that doorway wide open? Is it shut? Is it filtered? Now, I know that there are devices that don't always need Wi-Fi. They have a cellular, right? A smart device. Even tablets can sometimes connect to a cellular network. That's why that third layer, so we've gone relationships, next layer is Wi-Fi. That third layer in the pyramid is device level controls like software, Covenant Eyes, which I'm sure many of your listeners will have heard of. I work there. I use it, okay? Bark and other solutions are in that device layer that you put software on the device, or use Apple's own controls like Screen Time, or Android's own controls, which are Family Link. And so those are that technical part in the middle of those layers of protection are what I'm talking about. And there's a couple of others, but I wanted to answer your specific technical layer question there first.
Yeah, good. So things like Covenant Eyes, which scan the internet and identify problems and weed them out or restrict them, are part of that process. And that's part of the technical. What is it about the router, other than, I understand it's the most important device because it's the one device through which everything comes. Is that what you mean by that, or is there more to it?
Well, there are internet-ready pieces of hardware in our home that only work with a Wi-Fi network. Okay. So it could be the Ring. Many of us have, Ring for the door now, or your thermostat, or even in my home, the irrigation for my yard, I can control with an app through the Wi-Fi, right? Smart TVs are connected to the internet. Gaming devices like Xboxes and PlayStations and Switches, those are all connected to Wi-Fi. Kindles, which are tablets that, have a lot of power behind them, Kindle Fire, right? Those are internet connected devices that depend solely on your home's network in order to connect to the internet, which means that if you control what your router allows in, then you can control what content exits those internet ready devices, right? And so that's what I'm saying is Chromebooks are a great example, especially for families with children who depend on a Chromebook for schoolwork. It could be school issued, or you bought your own Chromebook. You can only use a Chromebook with Wi-Fi. Therefore, the adequacy of, now there's a pairing there though, to get back to what I said just a minute ago, Marlon. That Chromebook could go to a friend's house. Well, now the router at your house doesn't matter anymore. That's why you put device level controls on that Chromebook as belt and suspenders to your home network is controlling it. It goes to grandma's house and does homework. It goes to someone else's house and does homework. Then you put the device layer controls on it at that, Chrome operating system level, so that no matter where it goes, no matter what Wi-Fi it's connected to, it has protection.
The protection is at the device which travels with you. Yeah,
exactly.
What do you, getting now back to the relational aspect, tell me what you have seen succeed. Tell me what you have seen fail.
Well, I have a slide that I would love to show everybody listening to this, but I'll do my best to describe it. We do a whole 90-minute presentation just on digital trust.
Okay.
So if you can imagine in the middle of a drawing, if you can imagine in the middle of a drawing, if you know the recycling symbol, kind of arrows that are moving around sort of in a circle, okay? If you imagine on the left side of that's where I don't want us to be, and I don't want us to be on the right side of that either. So in the middle is digital trust. On the left side of, if you imagine like a PowerPoint slide, we have spying, control, and that's not where I want us to be. I don't want us spying on our kids online, because that doesn't teach them anything. If your child discovers that you're spying on their digital activity, all you do is actually chase them into the very things that you don't want them to do by compelling them to be a little digital ninja.
Right.
So we don't want that attitude.
There's no trust there.
Absolutely. And then on the other side of that, though, Marlon, we don't want to be apathetic and ignorant and just pay no attention to what they're doing online, because these are not passive technologies. I hear sometimes people say, oh, technology is passive. Really? Because it kind of feels like Alexa in my kitchen is listening to me. Because now I'm getting Google search ads, right? Now I'm getting Google search ads that are of the thing I was talking to Andrea about last night. That's not a passive technology.
No, that's not.
And so I don't want us to be in either one of those over-controlling or under-controlling. I want the Goldilocks zone in the middle, where we're building digital trust, which are 5 phrases: copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation, and coaching. Those are 5 phrases, behaviors, family attitudes that have, in my observations, often produce young people who learn how to use technology in a good, positive way.
How does that, maybe you can unpack each of those 5 a little bit. I don't want to eat up all the time on this, but it sounds like a good use of it, because I think, I really believe, I had a friend when I lived in Orlando. I call him a friend. He was more an acquaintance, but he was a very influential guy and a very insightful guy. And one of the things that he was always prone to say was the most powerful force in the world, excluding God, he was a Christian, and so that was assumed but he would say the most powerful force in the world is a relationship, implying that how we relate to each other was going to be a whole lot more significant than any document we might sign to hold ourselves accountable, or any training that we might do, or any technology that we might apply to restrict things. So tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, right. It's let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? This isn't a new thought. A contract wasn't needed. Let the relationship in your honor, right? So yeah, let's unpack each of those. I can do it really quickly. It's not going to be the 90-minute version. Copy me. Copy me is what it says. Would you want your children using their technology just like you?
So
where you use it,
do as
how
I
you use
do,
it,
but
and
be
what you
accountable to
use it.
myself. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly right. Number two is co-play. Do technology with your kids, shoulder to shoulder. Watch videos with them. I know you don't understand it. I know some of what they do online seems annoying to you. Even if you lose every single Nintendo match that you play against your grandson or your daughter, play it. Because I want them from an early age, Marlon, to believe that technology is a we activity and not just a me activity.
Great
That we
thought.
do technology together.
Yeah, great
Yeah.
thought.
The third one is curiosity. It's our posture, our parenting posture, right? Our frame, the way that we look at them when we're with tech. If all of our tech conversations are consequence, negativity, and yelling, then what are the chances they'll come to us when something bad happens? I want us to be curious. Even when the news is bad, I want our first reaction to be compassion and curiosity, because it's not, kids don't often choose, some do, but they don't always choose to make bad choices online. And you said why. It's because these are incredibly intelligent, the most brilliant software engineers on earth. And we're putting 13-year-old brains against that. And then we get upset when they make bad choices.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even fair. So I want our posture in front of them, even with bad news, to be curious and compassionate. The fourth part of digital trust is conversation, talking to kids about all of the horrible things that you hope they never have to deal with online years before they need it. That includes talking to 5-year-olds about pornography, which is a whole separate podcast. And then the fifth part of that is coaching. Like a coach, we eventually want them to get this right. We want them to win. So we show them how, and we treat it like a coaching opportunity and not just a controlling opportunity. I was in finance for 12 years. I get why you have controllers over your accounting department. It's so that money doesn't walk out the door. This is not that. We want to coach them into using technology in good ways. So there we go. Right? Copy me, co-play, curiosity, conversation, and coaching in the 90-second version and not the 90-minute version.
Very good. Where have you found your work and your message to have the most traction at the moment?
Oh gosh, we I mean, coming out of when most schools were locked down tight, a lot of faith-based schools opened up first or never shut down, which was fabulous, right? And so we spend probably about 80% of our time in, faith-based organizations of some kind. One of my teammates, kind of my right-hand guy at Protect Young Eyes, he's an ordained pastor, right? And so, that's really important to us, because there's a difference when we can say to a group of parents or students about the fact that, God already wrote ways in which technology can be used in ways to honor him long before it was invented. Like, we have guidance in Proverbs and other places to guide us. And so we spend a lot of time looking at good uses of technology, not just strictly faith-based, but also through the lens of human dignity. There is so much that's lost through the impersonal nature of interacting through a screen all day long, where we start to trade personal interaction for pixel interaction. And that does things to you. It does things to our young people. It does things to the way they see each other. It does things to their mental well-being. I mean, Marlon, we were created in relationship. We were designed for relationship, and we are better in relationship. And that is flesh to flesh and face to face, not screen to screen. Screen to screen is a good augment to existing relationships, but it's not a surrogate. It's not a replacement for that. So those are some of the you know, sort of the messages and the mediums and the places that we tend to spend quite a bit of our time.
That's incredible. One of the things that I always default to is just I think, well, let me put it this way. Here we are in a world that we didn't see coming 20, 30, 40 years ago. Cell phones became smartphones. Cell phones actually became something in that time frame, if you go back to the 40-year range. The internet and the whole aspect of being able to research and connect and see anything, almost do anything online, was not considered by the masses within my lifetime and yours as well. And we are way behind the curve in terms of keeping up with the ethics associated with it, which is exactly what you're trying to catch up with. Is that fair?
It is. And
yeah. So
yeah, I mean, this is what we do.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So the problem is, in much of our thinking, we think, how do we get caught up to the moment, not realizing how fast it was that the moment came on us and what that means for tomorrow. What will be the case in 10 years? What will be the case in 20 years for our children, for our grandchildren, for our great-grandchildren? How do you think about the incredible shifts that might be out in front of us that we have to continue to chase down? How do we get is there a way to get out in front of the problem?
Yeah, through laws and litigation. So here, I'm going to say some things that initially will seem antagonistic to maybe the audience, and listen to the entire segment of what I'm about to say before you judge me too harshly. Our industrialized history has proven time and time again that we always bend towards innovation long before we bend towards protection. So what happens is we want, in our amazing country, which I love with all my heart, to produce and to innovate and to grow. And I get that. But it's almost always at the expense of human beings before we figure out where we went wrong. Whether it was with certain industries in our past, certain foods, paints, chemicals, nuclear, paper, whatever we want to point at, right? Pharmaceutical, whatever it is. We make the same mistakes over and over and over again. What's different today to make that even worse, Marlon, and this is, I feel like we could have a whole nother podcast about this, is those that are charged with creating laws that hold our industry accountable to not exacting egregious harm on the citizens of this country, like no other time in history, do not understand the industry that they are trying to hold accountable.
So they're not qualified to legislate adequately.
Well, none of them came from it.
Yeah.
Because it's a new thing. It's happened so fast. It's not like we had somebody who used to run automotive company or someone who used to be in steel or whatever it happened to be. And so we're at a disadvantage as citizens in a place where companies the size of countries in terms of GDP,
Right.
we're trying to rein them in now, it's difficult.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the only way to get in front of that is to create enough incentive to quit producing technologies that are harming us so quickly in the first place. That's the way it's always been. When I described my role at Ernst & Young, my job for 6 years after Enron fell apart was to implement a law called Sarbanes-Oxley, which prevented companies from the type of financial reporting controls that Enron and WorldCom and others were using at the time. And you know what hasn't happened since Sarbanes-Oxley? We haven't had another Enron, because you threw a bunch of rich people in jail. You made them personally liable for making bad business choices. And guess what? Everybody started to behave. So liability is the great restraint to reckless capitalism. Yeah. There we go. That's my little soapbox.
That's very succinct and well put. Thank you. We're running out of time, but I want to ask you one more question.
Sure.
How can we better equip parents with regard to online? Feel free to promote what you do in that question as you answer that question.
Yeah, so we have a couple of real tactical things that parents can plug into. Marlon, we have a free research newsletter. Every 3 or so weeks, we ship out something called the PYE download. We go out, do the research, look up what's new and changed. We put it all together in a free email and send it out. And anybody listening to this can join that by going to our website, or you can text the word protect. If you're listening in the United States, this would work. Outside of the US, go to our website and subscribe to it that way. But within the US, just text the word protect, PROTECT, to the number 66866, and you will join our newsletter. It's that easy. Follow us on social media, even though there are aspects of social media I don't love. I'm going to use it for the kingdom as well as I can. We post a lot of great content out there, little tips. And we are on the verge. Now, listening to this later won't make sense. So maybe it'll already be released once, you might listen to this, but we are putting together a whole series of online courses that parents anywhere in the world could subscribe to. They'll be in initially 2 languages, English and Spanish. I lived in Mexico. It's a language that I speak and love. And so they'll be bilingual, but courses that parents can take, for example, we're going to create a course for grandparents, which is how to keep up with your grandkids online, basically, is going to be the course. So, little mini courses like that would be something that I'm sure some of you listening to this, parents or grandparents, might appreciate once they're released.
Very good. Today, folks, and let me make sure, you say protect young eyes, not protecting young eyes.
You've got it. Yep, that's right.
Thank you. Today we have had Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. We all want to raise a godly generation, and we have an interesting challenge in front of us that we didn't see coming, and we need to get out in front that we might see a godly generation, restore culture to Christ, one young heart and mind at a time, as we like to say at Veritas. Thank you so much for what you're doing, Chris.
Thank you, Marlon. It's been my pleasure.
Folks, you have been listening to Veritas Vox, the voice of classical Christian education. Thank you.